Greetings once again, my loyal compatriots, stout-hearted followers, and those unfortunate enough to have tuned in by mistake. Sir Bartholomew Featherstonehaugh here, explorer, raconteur, and accidental authority on the less reputable corners of human experience. Yes. My most recent misadventure began, as so many of mine do, with a triumph of poor paperwork and splendid overconfidence. I had concluded a most dignified visit to Terra, the very cradle of humanity, where I toured the ruins of the First Lord's palatial complex and engaged in a deeply patriotic session of wistful sighing. The dust was ancient, the marble exquisite, and the emotional drama absolutely first class. Yes. Naturally, I intended to return home immediately thereafter, perhaps to lecture a Devian Academy on the importance of being terribly important. However, the universe, in its infinite sense of humor, had other plans. Instead of boarding a comfortable Lyran-bound transport, I was ushered aboard a cargo freighter bound for the main asteroid belt. My luggage went one way, my dignity the other, and I went spinning straight into the company of the most peculiar and extraordinary breed of humanity, the Belters. Now, one has heard stories of the Belters, mining colonies carved into rock, forgotten descendants of pioneers clinging to the life in the dark. I expected soot, silence, and despair. Instead, I found an empire of improvised magnificence. Imagine, if you will, an endless field of asteroids, each one humming with life and light, habitats bolted to their surfaces like jewels on a crown, filled with laughter, industry, and the unmistakable smell of hard work and feet. The Builders have been out there since the dawn of mankind's spacefaring folly. Where the rest of us squabble over planets, they turn the void itself into a home. Entire generations have lived and died without setting foot on a single world. And yet, far from being some half-forgotten remnant, they have grown into a society of sophisticated as it is utterly mad. Yes. There are no nobles, no barons, no dukes, just engineers, miners, and pilots. They tell me that their leadership is earned through competence. Competence. A ghastly thought, I know, but they make it work. Their habitats are feats of artistry and necessity intertwined. Great spinning cylinders and domes carved from asteroid cores, lined with polished metal and glowing signage. It's all very functional, yet unexpectedly beautiful, like a cathedral built by a plumber with aesthetic ambitions. The air smells of ozone, oil, and optimism. Every corridor thrums with machinery and the murmur of thousands who know what a bad world stands between survival and the very tighty vaporization. Yes. For the people. Fierce, proud, and perilously inventive. Belters carry themselves with a swagger born of defying physics on a daily basis. Yes. They dress in a riot of patched suits and reflective scarves, speaking in a dialect so thick with slang, I thought for a time they were chanting hymns. When they laugh, and they laughed often, the whole station shakes with it. I attended a bar one evening that doubled as an oxygen reclamation hub. You haven't lived until you've raised a glass under a sign that reads, "No open flames. Again." Now I must tell you of their medical miracles. Dear me, if only half the Ionosphere had such competence in their infirmaries. I visited a Ceres station infirm, a modest structure built into the hull of what used to be a mining vessel, and what I witnessed there would make a physician in New Avalon faint into his stethoscope. Limbs regrown overnight, nerves reknitted with laser precision. A man whose head had once been used to stop an ore hauler stood before me entirely restored, if not a bit more talkative than before. Yes, the Belter's medicine is advanced beyond mere healing. They've enhanced themselves for life in the void. Reinforced bones, radiation resistance, and partial vacuum tolerances. Yes. I was politely offered a structural enhancement myself, but I declined on the grounds that my constitution, like my lineage, should remain unmodified and inefficient. Rumors whispers that some among them have extended their lives for centuries, reborn time and again by this miraculous art. I can only imagine their family reunions must be dreadfully awkward. And yet, for all their brilliance, the Belters are humble about it. Their medical mastery exists not for vanity, but necessity. They risk their life daily, mining, welding, venturing into the dark, and they have built a science of resurrection to match their courage. Yes. It is as if they looked into the abyss and decided it was simply another thing to fix it with a wrench. Yes. Their industry, too, is a marvel. Massive mining lasers carving through asteroids as easily as a butler through sponge cake, while entire factories drift in formation, tuning raw ore into polished craftwork. Once the belt fed Terra with its riches, now it feeds the entire Ionosphere with its ingenuity. Yes, even as planetary industries rose and overtook them, the Belters adapted, transforming from miners to manufacturers, from suppliers to innovators. If the rest of us went backwards after the fall of the Star League, the Belters merely tightened a few bolts and kept going. I must admit, I found their independence charming. They owe allegiance to no prince, no parliament, and yet they hold together. Their government is local, pragmatic, and full of shouting, but it functions. I, a humble knight of the sun, could not help but feel a twinge of admiration for their anarchic discipline. There's something terribly noble about the people who bow to no one, yet keep their air scrubbers immaculate. Yes, their hospitality, though occasionally violent, is beyond compare. I was introduced to a drink called vacuum punch, which, as near as I could tell, is equal parts ethanol, citrus, and despair. After 3 glasses, I began quoting Davian war poetry upside down in zero gravity. The locals were delighted and declared me Belter enough. They even offered to tattoo my visor. I obviously politely declined. The more I learned, the more I realized that while the Belters live far from our shining worlds, they embody everything that once made humanity great: ingenuity, perseverance, and the unshakable sense of humor in the face of annihilation. Yes, to them the void is not an enemy, but a neighbor whom they've learned to share tea. Yes. And when I finally secured passage back towards civilized space, aboard a ship that is, to my relief, both pressurized and pointed in the right direction, I looked out to the viewport one last time. The belt shone beneath me, a necklace of light strung across the black, every glittering station a spark of defiance. And I realized then that while the great houses squabble over thrones and titles, these belters have quietly built something far grander. A civilization that works. They are, in truth, the ragged aristocrats of the void. Their crowns forged from welding masks, their coats of arms painted on bulkheads, and though their speech is rough, their hearts beat with the same relentless drive that once sent mankind to the stars. So I raise my glass, or the dented tin that once contained it, to the belters. May their wills hold, their oxygen never falter, and their regenerative vats remain always at the ready. Should the sun in the inner sphere ever dim, I no doubt the belters would simply build new ones. Sir Bartholomew Featherstonehaugh, ever your devoted explorer and occasional competent pilot, signing off from another adventure most unplanned, utterly enlightened, and profoundly noisy. Yes. For the Prince, the Sun, and the accidental discovery of courage in the most improbable of places.